Hi, first graders. I'm back in our classroom getting ready to start another new chapter in math. We just finished chapter 12, and now we get to speed ahead. We're going to skip past 6 chapters and go to chapter 18, because now I want to teach you how to tell time. So we're on page 140 of our textbook, the one we're not going to write in, and we're going to look at all these different apparatus to tell time, okay? Some of these things you probably recognize, and maybe some of them you don't. Let's look. This here is called an hourglass. And it's called an hourglass because many years ago when this originated, back like in ancient Egypt times, or maybe a little bit later, they had enough sand in this hourglass to make it so that it took 1 hour for all those grains to fall down. So it actually marked the passing of 1 hour. You can still see these nowadays. Sometimes they're in games, sometimes you'll see them as a egg timer or something like that. They're usually 3 to 4 minutes. They're no longer hours, but this is how it originated. This is called an hourglass, and there used to be enough sand in there that would take an hour for it all to fall through. This looks like to me a representation of a very famous clock tower that's in London. It's called Big Ben. And on the face of that tower is a giant clock. This looks like a wristwatch, just like the one on my wrist, a wristwatch. This looks like a digital clock that might have a radio in it because there's a speaker right here. And it's got a little bit different format for the time. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. This kind of looks like an old cuckoo clock or an old kitchen clock that maybe your grandmother has or your great aunt Bessie or whoever. It's an old-fashioned kind of clock. And this, what's that? Does everybody recognize that? Yeah, that's a smartphone, isn't it? A cell phone or a smartphone. Good. So I've taken down the clock in our room so that I can show you up close. Hopefully you looked at the video before this video to tell you that this is the face of a clock. It's a big dial with numbers. The numbers are for the hours of the day. And the little lines are for the minutes. Now, if we look at the numbers, we have 12 numbers. There are 12 numbers around the clock, but there are 24 hours in a day. And if you were going to count all these little lines around the face, you would count 60 because there's 60 minutes in an hour. So we'll talk about these things, these pointers too. This short pointer these are both called hands, and the short one points to the hour. See how it's pointing right to 2? It's just after 2 o'clock right now. And this longer pointer or hand, we call them hands, is pointing towards the minutes. Up here, the little lines. So it's about almost 6 minutes past the hour right now. And our clock has an extra added feature of a second hand, it's called. And that's marking the seconds. And you'll notice that it's going past those little lines at a certain rate, and that's going to go all the way around, of which there are 60 because there's 60 seconds in a minute. 1 minute, 60 seconds. 1 hour, 60 minutes. Okay? So those are the components of our clock. Hours, minutes, and seconds. We're lucky because our clock in our classroom has an extra sort of feature to it. Okay? All right. Now, I told you that the hands aren't the same size, right? The hands aren't the same size. The short one touches the hour and the long one is for the minutes. All right? All right. And then the one other thing I wanted to show you, do you see the direction that the second hand is moving? See how it's going this direction? It's starting here and now it's going to go down. That's called clockwise direction. It starts at the top and it goes to the right. And we refer to that direction as clockwise. Okay? It always goes that way. You'll never see the second hand go the other direction if it's a normal clock. It always goes this direction. The minute hand goes that direction, the hour hand goes that direction, and so we can see, does the second hand go that direction? All time marked is going that direction. Okay? Good. Okay. Let's turn the page on we're going to go up to the next page, and we're going to look at now how to tell what time it is. So we said we had shorthands and longhand, and in our book, they're actually marked with different colors. And if you look at it closely, look at your book, it might look a little better than what my video shows. The pink hand is the shorter hand, and the purple hand is the longer hand. And so what is the pink hand going to tell us? Right, the hour. And the purple hand, what's the purple hand going to tell us? The minutes after the hour, okay? That's how we're going to look at it at this one. So in our first one, we're going to try and figure out what time it is. This is Sophia. Looks like she's getting out of bed, huh? And the shorthand is pointing to the 7. And when the longhand is on 12, that means it's exactly 7 o'clock. Okay? Let's look at that. 7 o'clock. And this little apostrophe means of the clock. It's sort of like shorthand, like when we did contractions. O'clock, of the clock, 7 of the clock. That means this time is 7 o'clock. Now, do you see those two little dots? They're kind of like a punctuation mark that we haven't really talked about yet. And that's called a colon. Let's look at that over here. 2 dots on top of each other is called a colon. And that's how we separate the hours from the minutes. The hours go first, and then the colon, and then however many minutes after the hour goes after the colon. Okay? So that's how we say 7 o'clock. We can say 7 o'clock this way. We can say 7 o'clock this way. We don't ever write of the clock. That's just to show what that abbreviation is, okay? We can write 7 o'clock this way if we wanted to draw a clock. We could do it that way. But let's not do that right now because the book's already drawn it for us. Okay, let's look at this one. What is she doing? It looks like maybe she's sitting down to have breakfast. What time does Sophia usually have breakfast? Well, let's look at it. The shorthand is pointing to the 8, and the longhand is at the 12. So it looks to me like she has breakfast at 8 o'clock. Or another way we could write it is with our punctuation mark, colon, 8:00, because it's right up on the hour, isn't it? It isn't any minutes past the hour. So when the longhand is up at the 12, that's exactly 8 o'clock. All right? Let's see what else she does. Looks like this might be a school bus. And she's got her backpack on. So I'm guessing this is what time she goes to school. What time does she usually go to school? Look at your book. Can you tell by looking at your book? That's right. Good. It's 9. The pointer the hour hand is pointing at 9 o'clock. See right here? It's pointing right at 9 o'clock. And we can write that in another way with our colon mark as exactly 9 o'clock. Good. Now she's at school. It looks like she's with her friend. What is she doing now? You're right, she's eating lunch. What time does she have lunch? What time does she have lunch? Looks to me like both of these are lined up exactly on the 12. Sometimes it's hard to see that, huh? Especially if there's not a big arrow mark like our clock. You see how our clock, it doesn't have an arrow at the end of it, does it? So if both of the hands were at 12, let me see if I can get it to go to 12, it's going to look just like one big line. It's not going to have the two arrows. Oops, let's see. Look at that. And there's the second hand too. Okay? So you would, if you see a clock like that, you know it's exactly 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock. We're going to say o'clock. And we're going to, the other way to write it is with our colon. 2 dots over each other. Hours separated by minutes. Okay? There's one other kind of tricky thing about 12 o'clock. We have another name for it. It's called noon. Have you ever heard that word? Noon. Rhymes with moon. Noon. It means 12 o'clock. Okay? Good. Okay, what about that? Looks to me like she's leaving school. What time could she be leaving school? Well, the shorthand, the pink hand in your book, what's it pointing to? It's pointing to the hour, and the hour is 4 o'clock. It's pointing right at the 4, and the minute hand is at the 12, so it's exactly 4 o'clock. 4:00. Here's the hour, followed by the minutes. Okay, dinner time. She's having fish for dinner. What time is it, class? What do you see? Look at the red arrow and the purple arrow. What does it say? Nice. I could hear you all the way here. 6 o'clock. And another way to write it is 6:00. Hours separated by the colon and then the minutes. 6 o'clock. Good. Okay, now here's a tricky one. Looks like she's brushing her teeth. She's got toothpaste foam all over her mouth. So to give us the idea that she's brushing her teeth before she goes to bed. But look at where the minute hand is. It's not really on the 12, is it? In fact, it's in between the 11 and the 12. Look at your book. Can you see that? You see that? So that's called a little bit before 9 o'clock. That's how we would say that. A little bit before 9 o'clock. If we were going to write it, we would have to write it as 8 and then 55 minutes. But or maybe 56 minutes, but we'll go into that a little bit later. I just wanted you to see how we would say, this is a little bit before 9 o'clock, and this one a little bit after 9 o'clock. So she goes to bed right after she brushes her teeth. It's not exactly 9 o'clock, is it? It's just a little bit after. Look at your book. It's a little bit after. Good. Okay. Let's go. We'll go on tomorrow. I don't want this to get too long. I'll see you then.